Prior to going into captivity, I had sympathy for those who were in distress. That had changed. Now, I had a deeper empathy. Sympathy is to feel sorry for. Empathy is to know what it's like to have nothing, to know what it's like to be kicked around. That, unfortunately, is the plight of many people in the world today. We can't change the whole world, we know that, but we can enable some lives to be changed for the better. We're not telling people what to do, we're enabling people to have the tools to change themselves, if you like. But we're giving them the opportunity, and that's what it has to be. So, our vision, we keep the light alive, and we bring hope. And we can only bring hope if we have hope.
We have hope. We are Waite International, and this is Waite Live. I'm Tim. I'm the Head of Public Engagement at Waite International, and delighted to welcome you to the first ever Waite Live. Welcome wherever you're joining us from. We want to hear from you, and we want you to connect with this space and share a little bit of your story. We gather in strange and challenging times for our world and for Europe, but we want to connect with you wherever you're joining us from. So let us know in the comments below this video where you are, and we'd love to hear from you. We also want to hear what's bringing you hope today. We want to hear about the things that keep you hopeful, even in the midst of all that might be challenging and difficult at the moment. Waite International is the international development agency of the YMCA movement, and we're working in partnership around the world to see young people flourish and become the best versions of themselves. We're a community of hope, believing that a better world is possible and that it's up to us, each and every one of us, you included, tuning in today to make that world possible. So come and say hi and tell us about your little stories and glimpses of hope. Because we need hope at the moment, don't we? We need to hold on to what gives us hope. This morning, we are thinking about and connecting with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, and know that many challenges already unfolding in that country, many people already fleeing to the borders, and so many challenges too for the neighbouring communities and the people who are seeking peace and seeking refuge at this really challenging time. At Waite International, we've launched an appeal to help us respond, and thank you for those of you who've already given and supported and enabled us to begin to make a difference and to work with the YMCA across Europe to enable us to respond in that place. It's in that context and in the context of that appeal that we want to speak to our inspiring co-founder and president here at Waite, Waite CBE, and special guest from our friends at the World Alliance of YMCAs, Catherine Elsig, and I'm going to bring them into the conversation in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Jappreet Kaur. Jappreet, welcome to YCare Live.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're very welcome. And Jappreet, can you just tell us who you are and where you fit into the YCare family?
Yes, so I am the head of philanthropy and individual relationships at YCare International, and my job is basically to love and care for all our lovely supporters in the best way that we possibly can.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I'm going to leave in your hands now our two wonderful guests for today. So over to you, Jappreet, for a conversation with Terry and Kathleen.
Hello, everyone. So yes, let's start this conversation. So Terry, firstly to you, thank you for joining us today. So before we reflect a little bit on the situation in Ukraine, can I just ask you about why is it that you're still involved with YK International over 3 decades after you were involved in founding the organization?
Well, I'm still involved because I believe that it's vitally important that we give young people all around the world, in conflict zones as well as other parts of the world, give them opportunities in life. I mean, I've traveled enough in my life and I've lived in many places abroad, overseas, from UK, and I've seen young people despairing because there's just not been opportunities for them. And one of the reasons I helped in the foundation of YCare was to stretch out to those young people, to share with them and to give them opportunities, and as was said at the beginning, to enable them to have some hope and to have a life. So I'm encouraged by what we're doing and delighted to continue with YCare until it becomes impossible for me.
Thank you, Terry. And Kathleen, thank you for being here and representing the wider YMCA family at this time, especially when we're standing together across the globe, and particularly here in Europe with war and violence in Ukraine. Kathleen, can you tell us how the YMCA is a vital force for good at times like this?
Well, thank you, first of all, very much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of this broadcast and to have an opportunity to discuss this important issue with you, the YMCA as a beacon of hope in difficult times, and of course, to have a chance to speak with Terry and listen to his wise words as well on the topic, and a great experience. I think there are 4 main reasons why the YMCA movement is a beacon of hope in times like this. One is certainly because the YMCA has deep roots in communities with programs that address unique and very real community needs. Many global organizations have global programs that they seek donor funding for, and you'll know very much about this, of course, because you're working in philanthropy. Now, while the YMCA movement is a truly global organization with operations in 120 countries, 12,000 communities around the world, programs are very bottom up. And in this way, they can address local needs in the best way possible. The YMCA movement works closely with people in communities to develop those programs. They leverage that good practice, of course, and adapt these to local conditions. Another point is that YMCA staff and volunteers truly, truly care. And it is this caring, this love. Terry, you once said, at the end of the day, love and compassion win. I believe that love and compassion are a core value across the YMCA movement, across the 120 countries and 12,000 communities, and that people truly care about the health, the well-being in mind, body, and spirit of the people with whom they work. A third point is the adaptability, I would say, of the YMCA movement. While founded in 1844 as the Young Man's Christian Association, the YMCA movement has adapted over the years. Again, I think there's that deep listening, the close connection with communities, to now embrace people of all faith, to embrace women, older people, younger people, of course. And now, as Terry wisely said, the movement is embracing, in particular, the power of young people, the hope, the unbridled innovation and optimism that young people bring to empower them to address some of the four greatest challenges that our young people face today: climate, unemployment, health, and civic justice. But with that, the YMCA is not bringing solutions. The YMCA is empowering young people to come up with solutions that are best adapted to their communities and will bring the best and the greatest outcomes for those communities. And the fourth point that I'd like to mention, and my last, is the commitment to mind, body, and spirit. While the YMCA movement has been and remains enormously adaptable, mind, body, and spirit is a core concept that has remained as a common thread. And I believe this holistic approach is also essential to why the YMCA movement is a beacon of hope, because the movement and the people in the movement treat people in their entirety.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing that very eloquently, and some really good information there. So thank you. And Terry, back to you. I know that in the past you have visited Ukraine a few years ago. So why is it important to you that we stand with and support the young people of Ukraine today?
In warfare, the main victims of warfare are the civilian population, and in particular, women and children. And my mind goes back, when I look at this present conflict, to the time when there was the war that involved Kosovo. And I went to Kosovo. And in Kosovo, I visited a young boy. He couldn't speak. He was totally traumatized. And I discovered that soldiers had entered his house and killed every member of his family. And he sheltered beneath a table and was the only one who escaped. And the consequences of that were totally traumatic for him. He was just one of many, many. And after the warfare was over, after the conflict was over, there were these tragedies right across the country. Well, we were able to do something. We set up a series of clinics to provide assistance for those who had been traumatized, principally women and young people, children and young adults. The consequences of what has happened are considerable. They're considerable for the whole world, not just for the people directly involved, but the people directly involved are paying a tremendously high price. And there is something that can be done. We say, I mean, the trouble is at the moment, and I could well understand this, I would not be a bit surprised if many people say, oh gosh, another appeal. You know, donor fatigue enters into it. And sometimes you begin to think, is there no end to requests that are being made? Well, we do live in a very turbulent world. And this appeal, which we're making for support in Ukraine, is absolutely urgent. I mean, no one can fail to have been deeply, deeply moved and impressed by the resilience of the people, the determination of the people, and the suffering of the people. I mean, you just look at those pictures of people trying to get on a train to escape. Crowds on the platform, thousands of people, and young babies and children being carried above the heads of people. That is a terrible experience. I mean, I've been in conflict zones. I've been in many conflict zones around the world. They're horrible. They're absolutely awful. We can make a difference. And as was said a moment or two ago by Catherine, the fact is that the YM is there on the ground with local people. And that is often so much better than sending specialists out who don't know the region, who don't know the territory, who don't know necessarily the people. We're there. We're in position. We can do something. but we need the support, we need the funds. And, you know, I'm often embarrassed about asking people again for funding. I say, oh dear, another appeal. But I'm sure anyone who's watched any of the film or read anything about this will say, this cause is something that we need to put our support to, give our support to, at least to begin to make a difference, and we can make a difference.
Brilliant, thank you, Terry. And yeah, if people are watching, I hope that they do support the appeal, and so thank you for that. And Kathleen, in the context of war and uncertainty, what are the and where are the signs of hope for you?
Thank you. I think this is a fabulous question. I'd like to build on a point that Terry just made, which is the threat in some ways of donor fatigue on the one hand. On the other hand, the dire needs, of course, in the country, the resilience of the individuals in Ukraine, their determination, their hope as well. I think one of the areas where we've seen an enormous amount of hope and enormous amount of passion is the people themselves, to preserve their freedom, to preserve their integrity, to preserve their sovereignty. This is something that can give us all hope at a time when we are in some ways overwhelmed with things like fake news and not always knowing what is right, what is truth. What we know is true in Ukraine is the hope and the passion and the desire of the people in Ukraine to preserve their liberty, their freedom, their sovereignty. And for donors, I think this is also the opportunity to ask the question, how can I help? When it's not on the ground, donors are not on the ground, the YMCA is on the ground. As Terry wisely put, we speak the language, we understand the cultures, we have the ability to help people in their communities and those who are fleeing. This is a true opportunity for partnership between the YMCA movement, the YMCA teams and volunteers, and donors. Donors don't want to go to Ukraine. Physically, I understand that. We're there, and we can make it happen. We can help. And I think this gives an enormous amount of hope on the one side, the hope that the Ukrainians are giving us all for resilience, for determination, for freedom, and the hope that organizations such as the YMCA movement give. We're there, we're on the ground, we're not going anywhere. We can do this, and we're ready to help.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's you've given me a lot of hope, and I hope others can feel the same way. So thank you for that. And finally, Terry, YCare has an amazing history of responding to moments like this and humanitarian crises caused by war and conflict. Why does YCare's track record in this area matter to you?
It matters to me very much because I founded or helped found YCare to be of support to young people around the world, to give them hope. And that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to support them in the middle of the most appalling consequences that anyone could think of. I might just say, is that someone's dog in the back? Obviously agrees with me or disagrees with me. I have to say that I have tremendous sympathy for the Russian people. I think they are being led by a group of totally irresponsible politicians. I could say I could be much stronger, but I will reserve my comments at that point. I have great sympathy for them because I think they've been deluded and blinded, many of them, and I have great sympathy for them. This is going to be an ongoing, long-term battle. If the battle on the ground is won by Russia, that will certainly not be the end of this matter. There will be very many needy people who need our support. And now is the time for us to give YCare and the YMCA movement all the support that we can to enable at least something to emerge from one might call it the ashes of despair. At the moment, there are many, many people in Ukraine who are frightened, who are injured, who are wounded, who are despairing. We can make a difference. Let's give them some hope.
Brilliant. Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate that. And thank you, both of you, Kathleen as well. I'm pretty sure that we could talk all day, and I have so many questions on my mind that I'd love to ask you, but I think I'd better let you go back to the important work that you're both doing. And thank you so much again. And I'm going to hand back to Tim Baker.
Wow, thank you so much, Japreet and Terry and Kathleen, for your wise words, your encouraging words, your inspiring words that have brought us hope today, helped us reflect on the challenges that we're facing in the world at the moment, but also really helped us think about what it is that each of us can do as a response. Thank you so much to those of you who've been engaging in the comments as we go along. Yep, thanks, Brian. I think it was a loud and clear hear from Kathleen's dog to join in with Terry's wise words. Great to hear his wisdom today. Thanks, Vardan, for joining us and for commenting on the good work that's going on there. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us from Mainz in Germany. And Amy's here from Oxford in the UK, and TJ from Cork in the YMCA in Ireland. Thank you all for tuning in. Graham, our CEO here at YCare International, just drawing out one of a couple of really great quotes. At the end of the day, love and compassion will win, and our YMCA family has always been rooted in community. Really great example of why YCare and the YMCA family are united in our response at the moment. And as we've heard throughout the conversation, YCare has launched an urgent appeal to support the response to the crisis crisis happening in Ukraine, the crisis unfolding on our news channels and in real life all the time. And we want to provide vital humanitarian assistance to those who need it through the YMCA in Europe, YMCAs in Ukraine and the neighbouring countries. As you've heard from both Kathleen and Terry today, the great advantage of doing that is that we, the YMCA family, are there on the ground. We understand the local context. We're working with people and we're already up and running and ready to receive your support. We've actually already received some images of the kind of work a donation to this appeal will support from our friends in Moldova. YMCA Moldova, as they're gathering vital supplies for refugees who are already fleeing the conflict in Ukraine. They're already amassing these supplies to help support and look after the refugees who may be arriving in the coming days and weeks. And we want to, with your support, to enable them to do even more of that and to provide more support for those in need. So as has been popping up during our conversation, you can visit ycareinternational.org/Ukraine today and make a donation and stand in solidarity with our neighbours in Eastern Europe, demonstrating that you're part of this community of hope who's bringing hope in the midst of a conflict and despair. So thank you, friends. Thank you for joining our first ever YCare Live. It's been great to have you with us. Yet thanks to some guys here as well, and Sophie saying how inspiring that was from both of our wonderful guests today. We hope to see you again similar time next month, and we'll no doubt be bringing an update on some of the vital work that's been going on and that you've been supporting and making possible in the weeks between now and then. But in the meantime, stay safe and go well.